Hey soccer fans, welcome back to the Feed the Fire podcast, where each and every week we are talking Chicago Fire and Major League Soccer. But you want to talk about the Fire again this week after their 1-0 home loss to the worst team in Major League Soccer? Or maybe talk about Messi's historic match? Maybe talk about new VAR expectations and how they're going the way of the NFL? Okay, fine. We will recap the Chicago Fire's latest loss, and we will preview the next match against St. Louis City, a rivalry game, so to speak. Don't worry, it's not all doom and gloom. We got some positives to talk about, even if they are from some of the fans, so stay tuned. Hey soccer fans, welcome back to Feed the Fire, Chicago Fire podcast. I'm your host Nick, and it's so great to have you back with me as we talk, as we commiserate, as we sympathize together, and possibly empathize together over the latest loss in the Chicago Fire FC's MLS season. First, a little housekeeping though. Have to say, Christ is risen, Christos Anesti, to all of my Orthodox brethren who celebrated our Easter this weekend. I had a wonderful weekend full of church, family, and of course, filling my belly with lamb. Shout out to my aunt and uncle for hosting the lamb roast at their house, and for everyone who brought all the delicious food. My wife's specialty, the spanakopita, the spinach and feta pie in the phyllo dough. Delicious. If you guys are ever that hungry, come on over. We'll get you some authentic spanakopita here. Everyone always asks me for Greek restaurant recommendations when they come to Chicago. I'm like, my house. My wife's the best cook I know. So it was a wonderful, wonderful weekend, for the Russians and the Serbs and the Ukrainians and every other Orthodox people out there. Let's see, Christos enviat, Christos voskrese. I can't even remember all the different languages that we learned to say Christ is risen in, but that is the joyful spirit that I greet you all in today, and it definitely helped get over how terrible the Chicago Fire played. Like I tweeted out, I don't think Jesus coming back from the dead could save the Fire at this point, but it was definitely worth a prayer, worth a shot. Other housekeeping matter, last week I had mentioned that Kuipers got his first goal in MLS against New England. That was incorrect on my part. He actually got it the week before against Montreal. He did score in that New England game, though. Also, I want to recognize STL Soccer News, who not only provides great coverage of St. Louis City, but also each and every week puts out a list of all the sites and shows that cover their opponent for the upcoming match. So I was happy to see them recognize our show here, our little Feed the Fire podcast, making their list. So please go check out STL Soccer News for a little bit of a kind of behind enemy lines take and what you can expect to see and how they're covering their team, but also for a lot of different resources from around MLS, different shows, independent media creators, podcasts, things of that nature. So check that off. Check that out. Check that off. Check that task off. Go scout the opponent. Yeah. And the last kind of housekeeping thing is going to transition into the heart of our show. And I do want to start off with a positive note. I think it is important to remember that as bad as things are going on the field, there still are a lot of positive things going around the club, the organization, and with the fans. So this this moment of positivity comes from one of our longtime listeners, friend of the show. I see him at all the home games, season ticket holder. Israel, thank you for writing in and letting us know your bit of positivity from this weekend. He writes in, "Hey Nick, not sure what is happening with the Fire. In the beginning they were scoring but giving up stupid goals. Now the defense has done better, but they're not scoring." Not a bad scouting take there, Israel, that's for sure. By the way, the Fire took good care of my son, and I am extremely thankful for what they did. To make a long story short, Dave Baldwin promised him, Israel's son, about 8 months ago the new red jersey at a supporters meeting. He was supposed to get it right after it came out, but never did. I asked a few times to the point I totally forgot and gave up about it. My son was having a hard time at school last week, so I decided to email the Fire again since I was losing hope he would ever get the jersey. The Fire got back to me and upgraded us to 2 field seats, gave him a signed Gutierrez authentic jersey, a signed Fire flag, and a signed Acosta hat. My son was, of course, super happy, but of course at the end was sad that the Fire lost against the worst team in MLS. I'm so thankful for the Fire since they really took good care of us, season ticket holders. I'm also a season ticket holder for Northwestern football and the Bears, but the Fire, I think, always go above and beyond when it comes to taking care of their season ticket holders. And on the flip side, on the YouTube side of the show here, I'll put up a few pictures. They got to meet Fabian Herbers while field side. Israel's son got a picture with the game ball, and also a great shot of father and son in their seats enjoying the match. So Israel, first of all, thank you for listening to the show, you and your son supporting Feed the Fire. And secondly, thank you for letting us know that even if the front office isn't doing so hot with their signings and with their coaching acquisitions and coaching moves here, that the organization as a whole really does care about their fans and really does want their fans to have such a great experience. And the fact that they came back and kind of made up for the delay in getting your son that jersey going above and beyond, I think that is a fantastic thing. And from talking to some of the people within the Fire organization, their director of client relations, director of communications, and even getting to meet Dave Baldwin briefly this season, they are so fan-focused, so customer-focused, if you want to think of it in business terms in that sense, that it's great to hear these kind of stories, even though the team keeps losing. And so to transition now into the meat and potatoes of this show, the Chicago Fire match recap against New England, as we mentioned, 1-0 loss. It was Chancalay in the second half, I think the 64th minute, ends up 62nd minute. Chancalay gets the goal to set the Revs apart from the Fire. I'm not going to talk too much about the intricacies of the game itself. I know John Donovan is going to talk a lot more about that. But I do want to mention a few things that stuck out to me in this game. First of all, they stuck with the 4-4-2 lineup, so it's nice to see that the coaching staff, as bad as they've been, it wasn't a desperation move, or maybe it was a desperation move, but it wasn't just we need to adapt to our opponent, starting last week with Atlanta, that they actually thought maybe this is a better way to spark the offense, have two strikers out there. And Koutsias and Kuipers, as poor a form as they have been in, whether it be lack of service, whether it be not getting their shots off, whatever it is, those two guys will hustle from opening to closing whistle. They will give you that pressing, that counter pressing, the diagonal runs, the through runs. They will make all of that. They will not stop running. Unfortunately for Koutsias, and it hurts me as a fellow Greek to say, he just continues to fumble over the 2 or 3 opportunities he'll have a match. Now, Kuipers is getting maybe those 1 or 2 opportunities. He's at least getting a shot off and forcing defense to make good plays against him. We saw Kessler come up with a huge block early on. Was it in the first half? I can't exactly remember. But he comes up with a huge block against Kuipers, who just, that's a rocket. Like, I'm sure Kessler is still feeling it even this Monday night as I'm recording here. But Kuipers has to now not just get off his shot. He's got to create a little bit for himself. And I know that's not his game. It wasn't his game when he was coming over from Belgium. And it wasn't supposed to be his game this season with the Fire. They're supposed to be able to provide him service. But he's got to do something. He's been dropping deep. He has been trying some link-up play. He has been working these 1-2 combos with Koutsias, and one of them will run over the top, and one of them will kind of play underneath. He's doing everything he can except trying to dribble and take on 2 defenders at a time here to get a shot off. So he might have to just say, screw it. It's not like we can get any worse, and it's not like anyone's going to yell at me for not passing the ball. I'm the striker, after all. So maybe he starts taking things into his own hands, or feet, as it were. But again, the 4-4-2 lineup did seem to work. Credit to the coaching staff for bringing it back in this game against New England. And it kind of looked okay early. Like, they started to generate some opportunities. But unfortunately, it was kind of that same old Fire script of, we're generating some early opportunities, we're not scoring, it's going to come back to bite us in the second half. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. As far as the starting lineup, Brady was in goal. Across the back line, Gutman, Pineda, Chihos, and Aragoni. And I want to point out Pineda playing as the center back. And this was something John Donovan and I were talking on the phone earlier today. And I used an NFL analogy. So in the National Football League, if your left tackle goes out hurt, there's a philosophy that says, well, you don't take your starting right tackle, move him to left tackle, and then bring up your reserve right tackle. At that point now you have two positions of weakness instead of just bringing up your backup left tackle. You know, a lot of NFL teams will have one of two philosophies. I want my five best linemen there at all times, or the converse, I'm not going to move guys around and end up having two or three positions of weakness for only one injury. So I think that is how I want to describe the use of Mauricio Pineda. I think Pineda next to Acosta as your central midfielders, or if you go back to a 4-2-3-1 as your defensive midfielders, I think that is your best center midfield pairing. I think Pineda is a much better passer than he gets credit for, and I think he works really well with Kellen Acosta. And Acosta can then go cover that ground and maybe push a little more forward, knowing that Pineda will be there to clean it up. Pineda is a solid player, not just for the club, but in MLS. He might not make an all-star team, but he is a very competent Major League Soccer midfielder, I would say. I'm not going to put him out on the wing and ask him to outrun anybody, but he can play centrally and play very well. I would rather see the Chicago Fire bring up Wyatt Olmsberg and have him next to Chihos, and that be your central center back trio that rotates: Chihos, Olmsberg, Turan. You know, heck, they did it last season to a lot better effect than what's going on this season. Definitely, I don't want to see a three-back system where it's, you know, Chihos, Turan, and Aragoni playing three in the back there. I love Aragoni out wide. I love seeing him moving forward. But again, I don't think you plug Pineda in, because that means that Fabian Herbers is now your center midfielder or your defensive midfielder. And for the last couple games, even though the Fire offense has, you know, maybe the eye test looked a little bit better, at least to begin the games, he's the guy, despite wearing the captain armband, that looks a little out of sync with the rest of the team. So rather than move Pineda and have two positions of weakness, I bring up Olmsberg. He is a competent MLS center back. I don't know, ever since Frank took over the head coaching job, he has been very low on Wyatt Olmsberg. Speaking of the midfielder, they started Mueller on the left, Gutierrez on the right, and Acosta and Herbers in the middle. It was nice to see Gutierrez back starting, but again, if you have to put Herbers in the middle, you're pushing Gutierrez out wide, and I think he might be better in the middle, creating opportunities. And I think he was the one that created that shot for Kuipers that Kessler had to have a crazy recovery run and slide tackle to knock the ball away. And then up top, you had Koutsias and Kuipers. And some of the positives out of this lineup. Again, we're not trying to be all doom and gloom here. There are some positives to take away, things to look for that the Fire can expand upon in their next match. Andrew Gutman. He has been a bright spot since coming back after his injury on opening day. He is getting forward. He is trying to create some scoring opportunities. He's trying to get those crosses in. And what I liked from him is he likes getting in deep and then either playing that pullback or high cross back. But when he saw that wasn't working, he started crossing the ball a lot sooner. He started seeing Kuipers and Koutsias making those earlier runs rather than looking for maybe the third runner at the top of the box. So he adjusted. He's adjusting to his teammates. They still got to work that out a bit, but he is definitely an upgrade to anyone else that's played that position over the last 2-3 seasons, especially offensively going forward. And you know, his defense isn't bad either. The other positive, coming off the bench, the CF2 player on the short-term loan, Amari Glasgow, gets the second half sub. And if you thought the other players on the Fire team had a work rate, had an engine, oh my gosh, this kid would not stop sprinting for the 20-25 minutes or so, maybe closer to 30 minutes of game time that he had. He was all over the place. I think he did have some nerves coming in early, his first MLS game, because you saw he was making a lot of moves. He beat the defender, but then cut it back, allowing the defender to recover, but cuts it back again and kind of gets ahead of the defender, but then runs out of space and dribbles over the end line. So he definitely had some nerves there, but had the confidence to come in his first ever MLS match, receive his first pass, and look to take on a defender and create a scoring opportunity, looking for a key pass. So that was a fantastic shift from him, and I think as he kind of understands the game at the senior level, he'll only improve. He did not look overwhelmed by the moment. He did not look to just kind of ease himself into it, and he seemed to know how to attack and want to attack. And I like the fact that they're integrating CF2 players now, and we'll mention that a little bit later on another email that I received. But you don't, like I said last episode, you don't want to just all of a sudden drop 4 or 5 CF2 players or new starters into a game, because they'll never figure it out. That's just too much of a step down across the board. But you bring 1 or 2 guys in for 20-30 minutes a match, maybe a spot start here and there, and you can start to integrate and build your depth. And the idea is then when you're at the postseason, then you have that depth to carry you, or you have that depth at the end of the season to keep you gaining a few points here and there to get into the postseason. That's the idea, but the Fire have dug themselves such a huge hole so far in the standings that it might not be worth it. And I'll remind you, go over to the website GolzTV, GOLZ.TV, where each and every week after I publish this Feed the Fire episode, I do a short, like 10 to 15 minute video for Goals, exclusively for Goals TV, just recapping all the scores and looking at the table and the standings in MLS, and we can talk a little bit about the Fire's place over there. Now the negatives, though, some of the negative things. I already mentioned Herbers has looked kind of out of sync the last couple games with the rest of the team. I don't know if it's just the fact that he is playing as a center midfielder and he's not comfortable there in a 4-4-2. If he was playing D-mid in a 4-2-3-1, maybe he's a little more comfortable. If he was playing out on the wing, maybe he'd be a little bit more comfortable. Or if it is the fact that if you see the picture at the end of the game that he is just kind of frustrated and over it. Maybe it's the fact that he's got the captain's armband and, you know, can't play the way he wants to, can't play a little reckless and get some of those yellow cards that he's known to pick up when he's wearing the captain armband. Yeah, it happened to him last week against Atlanta. Gets a silly yellow, and, you know, imagine your captain getting a red card in a game that is that tight, that close. Which, by the way, sidebar, I was watching the game with my son, and the announcers are saying, oh, Fabian Herbers is the guy that can like read any play, or he can do any sort of play or make that play, whatever. He's the veteran, he's smart. And then my son goes, yeah, he's also the player who can pick up a yellow card at any play. And I'm like, my 8-year-old is really giving crap to Fabian Herbers. He already knows his reputation. That's kind of a funny thing that happened over at our house, or I should say at my dad's house. We were staying for Easter weekend and watching the games. And sidebar, kudos to the MLS. This weekend, all games were in front of the MLS Season Pass paywall. So, great timing for me. I wasn't at home, wasn't logged into the account, but I was able to just go over to my dad's house, get on the Fire Stick he's got, download Apple, and just jump right on and watch it. So, it's fantastic. Thanks to Apple for doing that. And then the other negative kind of individual play, Chris Mueller and Yorgos Koutsias, 2 guys that I really like on a more of a personal player basis, but also from a systemic basis, because I think, again, Koutsias playing with that high motor, that pressing he can do, and you saw, I always going to point back to his Montreal game from last season, where he had, I think, a goal and an assist, because he would just push forward and attack, and I like that about him. He always goes forward with his runs and with his dribbling, and when he's trying to score, he goes forward. But too many times is he caught wrong-footed, or he can't get the shot off, or he ends up going down a little too easily with contact. And if you're a striker and you're not scoring, you can make excuses like that, but the bottom line's the bottom line. When you're a striker, you need goals, and he has not scored this season. Now, he hasn't been starting often, and maybe this is kind of his month or so run of games that Klopas and the coaching staff will give him to prove that, but he's got to start finding the back of the net. No better time to do it than this upcoming weekend against St. Louis. Also, Chris Mueller, I was really high on him. I loved when the Fire picked him up. Again, the local boys from Schaumburg, from the suburbs of Chicago, had a really good run with Orlando City, knows the league, but according to John Donovan, Mueller's been playing a little bit out of position, either flipping sides or played more centrally. But even when he is on the left side. I think he's better on the left side, cutting back in on his right foot, not only for crosses, but when he kind of pinches in or makes that overlap run on the inside, he'll cut back on his right, and he does like to curl it in. When he gets those sitters, those are difficult for him. But, you know, a 20-yard curler from the right side of the goalie, yeah, that's okay. He can put that in the far corner. But he's not getting those opportunities. I appreciate that he's looking to cross two Kuipers, to your DP forward, to your $12 million striker, but he just has not had that connection with him yet. And I know, again, like Coutts says, he hasn't gotten his run of starts until recently. And for his sake, I hope he gets a few more before they pull him for Glasgow, for whoever else is on CF2 coming up, or if they end up playing a 4-4-2 with Guti and Shaqiri in the middle, pushing Herbers out wide. So I worry about Chris Mueller's long-term future because it's just not clicking this season for him. On a team level, the goal they gave up, very typical of what we've seen in the Chicago Fire this season. Transition defense does not know what to do. When the ball is turned over, when New England starts their counterattack, the Chicago Fire backline immediately backpedals. Okay, maybe that in and of itself isn't the worst thing, especially if you're outnumbered or even numbered and you don't want to have your one defender step up, commit, or overcommit, and then get caught on an odd number situation if the ball's passed around him or he missteps and the attacker can dribble around him. You don't want that to happen, but similarly, you don't want to continuously backpedal and allow the attackers to just have the space to do whatever they want, to pick their spots, pick their shots, pick their passes. And that's exactly what happened here. The Chicago Fire backpedaled into their own 18-yard box. If you look when that shot was taken, even when the ball was played to Shankly, there was no Fire defender within 6 or 7 yards of him. They gave him so much space, and any halfway decent striker from dead center 20 yards out is going to put the ball in the back of the net. And, you know, I feel for Chris Brady. He was trying to anticipate a shot, go low, but it was Shankly who played it high to the corner. Brady had no chance to get it. And again, this isn't Chris Brady not being able to make a save. This isn't Chris Brady giving up a clean sheet. This is the defense allowing the attacker to just stop, pick his head up, find his spot, and put the ball in the back of the net. So the defense once again let down Brady. They give a striker room to shoot. They backpedal. They don't even hold the 18. You know, you hear that in some of the youth ranks. Just hold the 18. Or the keeper should be shouting. Maybe this you can put on Brady. Hold the 18. Step up. He needs to be yelling to his defenders. But you know what? When you're a 20-year-old, 19-year-old keeper, and you've got Rafael Chihos in front of you, and you've got Carlos Terán in front of you, and if you've got Tobias Sahlquist, this international signing, even though he didn't play in this game, but when you've got guys like that in front of you, should your 20-year-old keeper have to remind these guys, please go step out and mark the guy with the ball, the guy who's about to shoot and probably score on me from 20 yards out? No, he shouldn't have to be doing it. He should be doing it. He shouldn't have to be doing it. So maybe that's the little bit of criticism we can put on Brady there for not being the voice of the defense. But you got to remember, Chihos was the captain last season. He was the voice of the team last season. No longer now. But regardless, the defense continuously finds themselves backpedaling and out of position in transition defense moments. Now let's get into some of the statistics here. As we said, 1-0 New England victory. Shankly in the 62nd minute. Chicago Fire ended up, this was about 50-50 possession. Slight edge to New England. Technically 49.6% possession for the Fire, who had 16 shots. Hey, look at this. 3 shots on goal. The Fire had 3 shots on goal, everybody. That's 3 more than the last couple games. Sadly, their first free kick, or their first shot on goal came when they were already down 1-0. It was off Shaqiri's free kick, which I saw a lot of people teasing Shaq, and I'm glad they did. So he takes the free kick. It was an okay free kick. He gets it up and over the wall, but it's center of the goal. Not the most difficult save for Ivacic to make. But then he gets the ball to go take the corner, and it's pumping up the crowd. Look at that. I got a free kick shot on goal. Let's go. I'm like, dude, if you thrive on the crowd, you're in the wrong business, because you need to give the crowd something to cheer for. You know, we're not here to motivate the players. We're here to be entertained by them and watch them play halfway decent soccer at times. So that's my take on that. Thank you for pumping up the crowd after you earned a corner kick. Way to go, Shaqiri. Anyway, back to the stats here. The Chicago Fire blocked 5 shots, only 380 total passes, with a passing accuracy of 86%. Now, let's compare this to New England. 361 total passes and a passing accuracy of 84%. So, again, you see these teams aren't really controlling the ball in the offensive area, playing very safe when they do have the ball. Fire ended up with 7 corner kicks, and so go get your free hot dogs if you haven't already. And if you don't know that promotion, if the Fire can take 5 corner kicks, everyone gets a Portillo's hot dog. And a garden dog, too, if you're of the vegetarian, vegan variety. The Fire had 11 total crosses, 2 offside. I'm okay with a couple offside. It means they're trying to stretch the lines. They won 17 aerial duels compared to 18 by New England. Fire XG 1.5. I imagine a lot of that was from Shaqiri's free kick. And Kuiper's shot from inside the box that was blocked. I don't know how they adjust for blocks, defensive blocks on that. And I really wish that the MLS website would put back the value for each shot contributing to the XG. They had that last season, and it really showed you where the high quality chances were coming from and from who. But they took that away this season for some reason. I don't know why that's not on the website anymore. Anyway, Brady came up with 3 saves. The defense had 5 clearances, committed 4 fouls, and Aragoni picked up a yellow card. Well, I guess relative that was fine compared to the 4 from New England. Other advanced stats. The first half was mostly New England. The Fire did kind of have possession from like the 5th to like the 20th minute. That was when they had most of their first half. And then the second half, it was kind of a back and forth affair if you look at the passing or the possession breakdowns. The crazy thing, New England had a 0.7 expected goal on this one, and I got to imagine Chancalay's goal was awarded, maybe a 0.3 or 0.2 at most, and that was probably adjusted XG, the fact that it went in, because he was taking a shot from 20 yards out at the top of the box. Not a bad opportunity. This wasn't a header, 8 yards away from goal where you're going to get like a 0.02 XG. This was a shot from 20 yards out, dead center. So again, most of New England's expected goals, most of their scoring opportunity came on that one play, I would imagine. So again, the Fire, like the defense looked okay by virtue of playing a terrible team, but still they make the one same mistake and that ends up burning them, and that's all it takes. 1-0 New England. So to wrap up this recap here, I will say I've seen a lot of reactions to this. We've seen throughout the season, get rid of Klopas, get rid of Heights and Pelzer. Mansueto needs to sell the team. We need to sign new players. We need to bench all the current players. You've seen all these reactions, and for the most part, they're understandable, and for some part, they're actually reasonable. But I've started to see a new fan reaction over the last couple weeks where they are saying that the Chicago Fire should fold, that the league should come in, close down the Chicago Fire, give it a year or two, and restart as a brand new franchise. Have Mansueto sell the club, have everything shut down, whatever it is. I think that is a crazy overreaction. And I think an email from one of our listeners, Ryan, provides a kind of well-deserved counterpoint to that one. So Ryan writes in and says, "It's time to bring up more of the Fire 2 players. I'm calling it now. I hope I'm wrong. The season is over." Now, I agree, and I've said that in episodes past recently, that we need to bring some of these guys up, bring the competition. Klopas is way too happy just to run the same guys out each and every week, not have any real competition, and now that Glasgow's in the mix, maybe you're going to start to see some better wing play or some better midfield play, and I tell you, he gives these guys some first team opportunities in training. You're going to see a lot of the current starters start to at least train harder and train better. So I agree with Ryan 100%. It's time to start getting some of these guys integrated. If not on game day, then give them a lot more responsibilities and workouts in the training. But here's the heart of his email. The problem I have with what BWP said, and so you all know BWP, Bradley Wright Phillips, former Red Bulls great, former MLS great, now with MLS broadcast team or in-studio team, if you want to call it, doing the pregame, postgame. A couple weeks back, he said that Chicago fans should not spend any more money on this team. That They should not support such a terrible team. And I don't know if he went on to say it's a poorly run organization, but at least the implication was, why would you pay to go watch this when they're terrible? The players don't want to be there. The front office doesn't seem to know what they're doing. Coaching staff doesn't know what they're doing. So that's what Bradley Wright Phillips was getting at a couple weeks ago. So Ryan says, the problem I have with what BWP said, don't give the team any money. This isn't Europe where there's promotion relegation. And guys, I'm not getting into a pro-rel discussion here. That's not me. That's not this show. Go find some wacky pseudo account on Twitter if you want to talk pro-rel. Ryan says, here we can lose a team if ownership isn't happy, and we'll be left with nothing, which sucks. I wish we were more European with sports. I will continue to watch to see who really should be here. And that's the point I want to get. He's right. Like, everyone's calling for this crazy ridiculousness of reset the team, change ownership again. Like, if you're going to do that, you're going to lose the team. There will be no MLS team in Chicago. And if you buy into a lot of the rumors coming out from, maybe 7-8 years ago, or even earlier than that, where the league wanted to stifle the Chicago Fire, didn't want the Rodriguez-Hauptmann ownership group to do anything with this club. Supposedly there were some rumors that Garber was anti-Fire some years back. So that's the last thing that we need then, is to start suggesting to fold the team, to relocate the team, to sell the team to a new ownership group that might move them anywhere. That I agree 100% with Ryan on this. That is not the solution, because we could end up really losing it all, losing the whole club in and of itself. And he says, I wish we were more European with sports. I kind of get it in that nature, where you want to support the system and you want to have the diehard fans coming in and out every game, even when your team sucks. But yeah, I like his last point too. Continue to watch to see who should really be here. And to me, that comes down to players and coaching. Either manage and to a certain extent the front office, the sporting director and the technical director and all that, they've got to show they want to be here and actually make some moves. I was talking with John Donovan. He's like, I'm surprised they didn't just fire Frank Klopas and the entire coaching staff. People have been suggesting to bring up the CF2 coach. At least he knows how to coach tactically. And I know John's going to give you some coaching suggestions as well of who he thinks, some people he knows who he thinks might be good coaches for the Fire. So I'll leave you with Ryan's take on that and just say, hey, remember, Fire fans, as terrible as it is, be careful what you wish for if you wish the team folds. It make them true. Let's transition now into our halftime, into our water break, into our sponsor break here, brought to you by Skira Icelandic Spring Water. Icelandic for clear, Skira water comes from a spring in a government-protected nature preserve in Iceland with naturally low mineral content. This isn't your average water, clearly, pun intended, it's one of the best. And Skira Icelandic spring water is available at your local 7-Eleven. And if anyone's listening out in New York, like I hear they're starting to get into the Walgreens in New York and maybe in Chicago, so keep your eye out if you are buying bottled water in Walgreens, but definitely get over to your nearest 7-Eleven. It's heating up here. Summer in Chicago is coming. Stay hydrated with Skira Icelandic spring water. And with that, I'm going to introduce our featured guest, the one, the only, John Donovan. Take it away.
Nick, John Donovan here talking about the Chicago Fire and the MLS. Nick, we had quite a game. We had a couple of games within the game, I think. The Chicago Fire against the New England Revolution. Fire lost the game 1-0 with a brilliant shot by a young Argentinian named Chandale. I've been watching him play for years, and the guy really, he always has some great move within a game. He's a good competitor. He's a good forward. I'd love to see him with the Fire. He would add a lot. But, the game itself, I am always anxious to see how Frank's going to start out the squad. It almost tells you what's going to happen with the game. And he brought out a squad today that he followed up with Koutsias up front with Kuipers, which I do agree with. I think it adds something to the Fire. But, the most important position on a soccer team is the number 10 position, the Messi position, or that quarterback, that guy that feeds the forward line. It's the center midfielder should always be available for the first pass. And when he gets it, if he can bring it forward, not passing it forward right away, bringing it forward and making those defensemen commit to him rather than to the forwards. That's the center midfielder's job. Exactly that. I had the treat of coming back from Paris Saint-Germain and seeing one of the best center mids, the Portuguese team midfielder. The guy is always available, always clever passes, not always looking for the score. I think he had 2 scores this year, but just an incredible, always available, always dynamic, always talented player. So we have one with Gutierrez, but Frank keeps starting him out of position. This time he started him over the right side with Herbers and Acosta, 2 defensive midfielders underneath. And I don't know who was on the left side. Mueller was on the left side. But it just doesn't work. The team doesn't work when you do not have that quarterback. It would be like telling the Bears to hike the ball just to the halfbacks. It takes away a whole dynamic of the team. And Frank has done it again. It just amazes me. In order to have a good soccer team, you have to have talented players, good coaching, and this is the last one, and smart players. Now we've got 2 guys on the field, and I'm not saying you have to go to college to be smart, but 2 guys that are exceptionally smart on the Chicago Fire team, and Klopas, for some reason, doesn't pay much attention to him. One is Pineda, that he does play, but he's not playing him where he's really good in that that defensive midfield spot next to Acosta. Forget about Jimenez and these other guys. Freddie Navarro, who lost you the game the other day. That Navarro name has lost a lot of games for the Chicago Fire team. But Pineda should be there. And Ohmsberg, who has not gotten a shot this year, should be your center midfielder. He's smart, does not make mistakes. He's rough. He's fast. He's a great teammate. I would be starting him, Arangoni, and Dean as the fullbacks on the team. Terran is very, very unstable. He will lose you as many games as he wins you. And Sijos, I'd have him off the bench. He just seems to not be, other than head balls for corner kicks, I don't think his career is flourishing right now. I'd say it's time for him almost to go back to Germany. But that's pretty much the game. The 1 goal by Chantelet, Nick, was beautiful. When you're a pro, you can feel the movement of various players before you look up. And I know that Chantelet knew that goalie was tracking him across the front of the goal, and he just brought it back. Luckily, I checked out that score. He didn't really look up, but I guarantee you he knew that guy was tracking him. He tucked that one in the corner, and c'est la vie. That was the game. The second half, the Fire came out, and Nick, I hate to say this, but they didn't seem like they wanted to play. I mean, a 1-0 game discouraged them. Yeah, he made a couple of substitutions in there, but when your when you're down 1-0 and you're putting in Federico Navarro, what does that tell you? He's putting in a guy that really struggles passing the ball and is really inflammatory on the field. He's not worth the money. I think they're paying him $750,000. Oh, my Lord. That is a lot of money for a guy that has lost the team a lot of games. I don't know what Joe Mansueto should do, but after this loss and still going into the rest of the season, think back when New England was losing all those games and Bruce Arena came back in and straightened up the squad. The Fire do have the players. They do have the players. They've picked poor coaching. And, I mean, how much worse can it be that you name the guy coach of a team that's developing and he's been fired 3 times for not producing winners? It just does not make sense. So, Nick, hopefully we're hearing Bruce Arena back or El Piojo from Mexico. I would love that. I'm a big guy with that. Or even really going out of the league and pulling in the best college coach that really knows the sport, that played pro soccer for Houston, Johnny Torres from Creighton. It would be a mystical move. He's an educator, coach. He knows the pro game. He's put out probably more pros than any team. And I would take Matt Poland from Chicago House and make him the assistant. He's a real smart coach, coached over in Finland. I mean, he's trying to break into any team that will get him there. He's won a lot of games that his team shouldn't have won. It would really regenerate this squad. I mean, you got to break this Klopas curse. And you've just got to get Heinz and this other dude off the management team. You can't win with just the next European player or the next South American. You got to develop a squad. And, look at Philadelphia. They bring them all in from their talented leagues that feed them. They don't go out looking for DPs like the Fire and then bring in another. I mean, Kuipers right now has 2 goals. Shaqiri has 2 goals, 1 a penalty kick. I mean, come on. We're not going to win until we straighten out the coaching situation and the DP situation. So thank you very much, Nick. Hi, Mike. Hope everybody has a good evening.
John, thank you so much for your weekly contributions here on the Feed the Fire podcast. I certainly hope a few people from the Chicago Fire front office are listening to all your notes and all your thoughts, as well as everything that's going on with our show and around the Chicago Fire discourse here. Now, transitioning to the upcoming match, a rivalry game. Can we say it already? Rivalry game. They beat St. Louis twice last season in their only 2 matchups so far against the young MLS club, who's now in their 2nd season here. But it seems to be a budding rivalry if you believe what's going on social media. There's definitely a lot of fans on both sides of the state line who are willing to trade barbs and make this a lot more meaningful of a match between these two teams. So let's get to know St. Louis City SC a little bit. And gosh, that name is such a mouthful. St. Louis City, and by the way, city is all caps. St. Louis City SC. All right, whatever you say. The game will be May 11th, this upcoming Saturday, 7:30 p.m. kickoff. St. Louis is currently 9th in the Western Conference on 13 points, so a huge step back from where they were last season when I think they started off with like a 7-game point streak or like a 5-game win streak or some great start for them. Right now, though, only 2 wins, 1 loss, and 7 draws. A lot of draws, a lot of come-from-behind draws there for St. Louis, which doesn't bode well for the Fire. Looking at their offense a little bit, 15 goals for, 14 against. So, balanced, is that the right way to say it? Definitely their offense has taken a step back from last season, and the defense as well has taken a little bit of a step back. Looking at their recent form, they've had a win, a loss, and 3 draws in their last 5 matches. Last 2 matches were draws. Last week, 0-0 against Houston. The week before, 3-3 against Kansas City in a just barnstormer of a game. Barn burner of a game, if you will. Chicago Fire, haha, barn burner. Anyway, so they're coming in on a little bit of a lull, a couple of draws, and they're definitely going to look at the Chicago Fire as a team that they can beat easily, especially at home. This is St. Louis is saying we're going to win 3 points here, and I think that's what the Fire have to remember. If they can get to St. Louis early and frustrate them early, maybe that helps the Fire secure a point on the road, maybe steal a couple goals, maybe do the improbable and come away with a win in St. Louis. But again, getting back to St. Louis, getting to know them a little bit, their 2 leading scorers, Celio Pompeo and João Klaus, each have 3 goals on the season. But 7 other players on the team have at least a goal or 2 as well. So 9 different goal scorers this year for St. Louis. Their assist leaders are Thomas Totland and Rasmus Alm, or is it Tomas Totland? They each have 2 assists, so not like there's one great playmaker for them. But Klaus and Pompeo also have an assist each. And there's a handful of other players as well who have assists. So even though St. Louis City isn't this powerhouse of an offense, a lot of players have contributed throughout the course of the season so far. Looking on the goalkeeping side of things, because we saw their defense, they're giving up over a goal a game, which hopefully is good for the Fire. But as far as the goalkeeping goes, Ramon Berkey, his save percentage, not good. 62.9% save percentage. The best keepers in Major League Soccer are in like the mid-low 80s, between like 82, 84 save percentage. The worst goalkeeping percentage is DC, 59.5 save percentage So St. Louis, Roman Berkey, 4th worst save percentage in Major League Soccer. So the Fire need to be shooting. Now, St. Louis also has 4 clean sheets, tied for the most in MLS with Cincinnati, but I think that is more of a defensive accomplishment than it is goalkeeping. Again, look at the save percentage. Also of note for St. Louis, they have the 2nd worst passing completion percentage. Completage? That's not a word, I don't think. St. Louis has the 2nd worst passing completion percentage in Major League Soccer at 76.8%. So they are a counter-attacking team, lobbing balls forward, launching balls forward, not really trying to build through possession. Not maybe the best matchup for that transition defense of the Chicago Fire, who keeps backpedaling into their own 18-yard box. But we'll see. We'll see how Klopas and co line up if they go back to the 4-2-3-1 to try and stymie St. Louis's counterattack, clog up the middle again. But St. Louis does have the 4th highest amount of scoring attempts in Major League Soccer at 164. Now, Major League Soccer's website calls it scoring attempts. I don't know if that's key passes. I don't know if it's just shots. I think it's just shots because the very next statistic is shot on target percentage. And that is the 2nd worst in the league for St. Louis, 31.7%. So even though they're getting the 2nd most shots off, only 32% of those are actually going on goal for the 2nd worst in Major League Soccer. By comparison, Miami and LAFC are the top 2 teams in terms of accurate shooting. Miami has a 46% shot on target percentage, and LAFC is at 44%. So this is not a good shooting team for St. Louis this season. Hopefully that doesn't change against the Chicago Fire. Looking at their last lineup, that 0-0 draw against Houston, they came out in a 4-2-3-1. Berkey playing goal, left to right defense, Markanich, Hebert, Parker, and Totland. Defensive mids, Ostrak and Durkin. Attacking mids, Pompeu, Vasilev, and Alm. And then their sole striker up front, João Klaus. Now, Vasilev is a player who probably is going to find a few opportunities this season to get a handful of more goal contributions. So he's a guy to keep an eye on. Obviously, we know Klaus can score. Obviously, we know Pompeu is a goal scorer as well. But keep an eye on Vasilev. If he is having a good game, it's going to be a long day for the Chicago Fire. If he is off his mark, if he gets subbed out early, that's a sign that St. Louis knows they're struggling. Keep an eye on that. Their manager, Bradley Carnell, a good manager by all accounts, had a long offseason before their expansion year, which really helped him prepare for that first year and get that mentality. But now having to do it for a 2nd year straight, you got to change things up from your approach. And I don't know if he has fully succeeded on that or done it to the standard, probably not to the standards that he would set for himself if they're sitting 9th in the West at this point. Prediction, because I feel like I should give a prediction. But what am I going to say? The Fire have no offense. St. Louis offense is barely better, at least from a numbers standpoint here. Do I say 1-1 draw? I don't know if St. Louis is a better home team than an away team. They were able to bang 3 in against Kansas City, so they've got the potential to do it at home on the road. But they really haven't shown it. They're scoring just over a goal a game, and they're giving up just over a goal a game. Meanwhile, the Fire aren't scoring and hardly conceding unless it's RSL, right? So, I mean, maybe a 1-1's a fair game, and maybe the Fire need to go on the road, get out of their heads, get out of their environment. I'll predict a 1-1 draw on this, and I think the Fire would absolutely take it. They would love a draw at this point, especially if it's 1-1. Even if it's 2-2 or 3-3, they score a couple of goals here. So I'm going to pick the draw. I'm going to pick the 1-1 draw. I think that's a safe and reasonable approach here. I'm not going to get out ahead of myself and say the Fire are going to win 3-1 like I did last week. Whew, man, I was really looking forward to Easter when I made that prediction. But yeah, that's what I think. I think that this is going to be just a counterattacking game, back and forth, and whatever defense is going to break first is going to concede and possibly lose the match. I don't think it comes down to goalkeeping. I think Brady is the much better keeper, but it's going to come down on the defense line shots. Maybe Berkey gives up, a howler, if he's under duress from the Chicago Fire attack. But that would be the first time the Chicago Fire attack put anyone under duress this season. So we'll see from there. Now let's take a step back, look a little bit broader picture, catch up on some league news here. Obviously, we have to talk about Leo Messi and Inter Miami. And I'm not the kind of guy, if you've listened to my show, I'm not here just to stroke Miami, stroke Messi, and oh, look at how amazing he is. But you got to recognize it when he does it, right? We all know how good he is. He had 6 goal contributions against the Red Bull. And that is an MLS single game record. 6 goal contributions, a goal and 5 assists. Those 5 assists, also a single game MLS record. Now, I was going to be snarky and I didn't want to open the floodgates on social media, but Messi did it all in the second half. And people are saying, oh, he did this all in 45 minutes. 6 goal contributions, 5 assists, 45 minutes. I'm like, yeah, if he was so good, he would have done something in the first half. But I didn't want to open that can of worms on the interwebs. So that was kind of my little joke. Like, if Messi was so good, why did he wait to the second half to do anything about it? But yeah, a goal and 5 assists against Red Bulls of all team. You know, it's not like he did it against Chicago or San Jose. He did it against Red Bull. Also, the other statistic that was said on the broadcast of that game, Messi now has 8 straight games with a goal contribution to open the season. Now, he did miss a handful of games due to injuries, due to time off. So, maybe take that with a grain of salt. But in 8 straight games for him to open the season, he has a goal contribution. Only 2 other players in MLS history have done that. Kobe Jones with the Galaxy back in '98, I believe they said, and Clint Dempsey with Seattle. When did he play in Seattle? Was this the early 2010s, I want to say? Maybe a little later than that? No, that sounds about right. I forget the exact year, but yeah, it's Clint Dempsey, Kobe Jones, and Leo Messi are the only 3 MLS players to open the season with 8 straight games with goal contributions. Another little statistic, not so good for the Chicago Fire. I was looking at the MLS Team of the Match Day. When you look at players who have made it, at least 6 of the Chicago Fire's opponents have had players make Team of the Match Day against the Chicago Fire. Now, that does include bench. We saw Shankly this week for New England make the Team of the Match Day bench with his game-winning goal against the Fire. And I forget the player from Montreal who had 2 goals in the Fire's 4-3 victory there. He ended up making the bench for Team of the Match Day in that loss. Had they won 3-2 instead of losing 4-3, I bet he would have been on the starting man of the Team of the Match Day match. But yeah, the Chicago Fire have at least 6 opposing players making Team of the Match Day through, 11 games now? Yeah. So if you play against the Fire, odds are one of your players, you got 50-50 chance of one of your players having, a star week, having a top performing week. Not the best for the Fire there. Also, let's take it out to the continental competition, Concacaf Champions Cup. Columbus Crew defeat Monterrey of Liga MX 5-2 on aggregate, including a 3-1 win in Monterrey to advance to the finals of the inaugural Concacaf Champions Cup against Pachuca. And I say inaugural because it's the first year of this format and of this new name, but prior to it, we had Concacaf Champions League. Before that, they had the Concacaf, I think it was Concacaf Champions Cup again. So Columbus could do one thing that no other MLS team has done in this continental tournament. And yes, we have had a handful of MLS teams win the tournament. Seattle, the first and only to win the CONCACAF Champions League iteration, but DC and the Galaxy also won it when it was in the prior Champions Cup era in the, I want to say, early 2000s, roundabout there. We also saw Montreal make it to the finals. We saw LAFC make it to the finals. Toronto make it to the finals. Montreal. I can't remember if RSL made it to the finals or the semifinals. I want to say they also made it to the finals. So the MLS has had some reasonable amount of success, more so recently. But the Columbus Crew could be the first MLS team to defeat 3 clubs from Liga MX in this tournament. And obviously if they do it, they're going to win the trophy. So we've had teams defeat 2 and lose to 1 in the final, but never defeat 3 Liga MX opponents. And when Seattle won the CONCACAF Champions League, they ended up playing New York City in the semifinals, I want to say. So they ended up like beating a Liga MX team, beating an MLS team, and then beating a Liga MX team. So that may have been the most impressive run so far to win the title. But Columbus Crew could do it. And to recap their run, they had the first round bye as MLS Cup champs. Then they beat Houston 2-1 on aggregate. They beat Tigres on PKs after 2 1-1 draws, and then defeated Monterrey. So if they beat Pachuca, I'll say with like a 99% certainty rating here, they'd be the only MLS club to beat 3 Liga MX teams in continental play, and then they would obviously have some amazing celebration and go off to the Club World Cup, the expanded Club World Cup, and match up against some of the top clubs from around the world and really bring MLS into the international spotlight, for better or worse there. Well, with that, soccer fans, we're going to wrap up the episode. Please make sure you share your link to the show. Share it with a friend. Share it with a fan. If you think I'm talking out of my butt, then hey, share it with an enemy. Let them be miserable too listening to my little talks here. But please, that's the only way we can grow the show at this point, is having you all spread the show by word of mouth here, right? Again, share the link, leave a review, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. You know what to do, fans. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you to Israel and Ryan for writing in. Thanks to everyone for interacting on Facebook, on Twitter, on all sorts of social media. And as always, let's go Fire.